either 100% on the hitter or 100% on the runner. And a pretty good pitch. That appeared to be a split-fingered fastball. Spezio waits on deck. A couple of men on for Oakland. Stairs also with a 9-game hitting streak on the line.
Okay.
Now Tony Phillips will talk. He loves to talk, either in the dugout, in the clubhouse, or even when he's on the base path. Having a conversation with Jeter. Well, he's the closest guy. He's the only guy he can talk to right now. Down low, it gets away from Posada. Does Posada? No, he won't have time. The runners will cruise to second and third.
That's going to probably be a wild pitch, and you can see Posada upset about that. This ball's got to be handled. It's a splitter in the dirt, and watch the trap door. Ball came up a little bit. Posada didn't even get down on his knees. He tried to, whenever you try to make a catch like an infielder would make on a short hop, that's a bad sign. And Joe Torre, of course, his former catching experience, he knows that. Squirted through the trap door.
Swing and a miss, strike three. Big strikeout by Roger Clemens, a man on at third with less than 2 outs. So Stairs is down.
Posada couldn't pick up the wild pitch, but Roger Clemens picks up Posada and strikes out Stairs. So 2/3 of the way out of trouble here in the first inning.
So Scott Spezio playing first base this afternoon. He played there last night for Jaha, and it's strike one to Spezio. You'd much rather have, and nothing against Scott Spezio, and the fact you'd much rather have him up there with 2 men on than Jaha. And the throw back at second is not in time. Yankees try to keep Giambi close at second. Thought maybe he was sleeping down there.
A good time to throw with 2 outs, because a guy who has a bad ankle like Giambi does, bad right ankle, trying to get off the base a little bit farther so he can score on a hit to the outfield.
This will be popped up into center field. So Clemens, after a couple of walks here in the first inning, comes back to strike out Stairs and then gets Spezio to fly out to end the inning. A's leave a couple of men on. We played one here at the Coliseum. No score. Back at the Coliseum, Tino Martinez, followed by Leday, and then Leyritz, the scheduled 3 for New York. And Olivares' first pitch hit a call strike. Ground ball right side. Nice play by Jose at first base. He gets a couple of people to clap for him, and then rolls the ball over to Hideki. And Hideki makes some fans just beyond the Yankee dugout very, very happy. In on the hands, it popped up into shallow center field. Back to Tejada, one gone.
Omar Olivares, sinker slider, rather standard equipment, not overpowering. He does have control problems. That unusual start when he was with Anaheim and beat the Yankees earlier this year. That was after the Chuck Finley 1-0 shutout. That was a game that he worked 6 2/3 innings. He walked 6 and struck out no one.
Ricky Leday with a solo shot last night, home run number 5 for him, and I mean it was a rocket into right field. After putting on a show in batting practice, now Olivares with a count of 1-1 on Leday. 1 out, no score. Jimmy Leyritz waiting on deck. Leyritz the designated hitter, so Chili Davis gets the afternoon off. This time it's cued, just foul off the third base side. It looked like that ball was going to stay fair.
Did certainly from our standpoint. Olivares wants another ball. We talked about, and you've heard about, contact hitters. Well, Olivares is a contact pitcher. I mentioned no strikeouts in his first start against the Yankees. His 3.5 strikeouts per 9 innings is the lowest ratio and rate in the American League. So that gives you an idea of hitters who make contact against him. He is not a strikeout pitcher. So if the Yankees can get a guy on third with less than 2 outs, a better chance to score.
Shallow center field, and going back once again, Tejada to make the play. 2 gone for New York in the second. That appeared to be off the end of the bat, and that will bring up Jimmy Leyritz. So the King makes his first appearance here at the Coliseum since 1996, I guess it is. Known as the King, that's his nickname. And will the King leave the building? We'll have to wait and see. 1 ball, no strike count to Leyritz. Since joining the Yankees, Jimmy 3 for his last 10, and look at this. High and long into left field, and the King almost left the building. It will be a 2-out double for Leyritz.
With none or 1 out, this would be insignificant, hitting the wall there. But with 2 outs, this is a tough break for the Yankees. That ball missed going out of the ballpark by about 4 inches. My partner proving his prescience before that swing.
Well, Posada's got a chance to put the Yankees in front. Last night in the second inning, the Yankees only scored 8 off of Oakland. I say that facetiously, but 8-run inning with 4 walks, and the Yankees made the A's pay for it.
Third straight year that the Yankees have had an 8 or more run inning here at the Coliseum.
Good pitch by Olivares on the outside corner.
Scoring 9 runs in an inning last year, 8 runs in an inning in '97. You know, that call you almost made with Leyritz hitting, almost like the Babe Ruth shot against Charlie Root. 32 series, right?
Take your shot when you have the feeling, you know. Outside, 2-1 now to Posada. Posada feeling a whole lot better. Last time he caught Roger Clemens, he came up with a sore thumb. Had to have it taped up, and even missed a game in Seattle. Was pressed into service when Joe Girardi had to leave the ball game because of that base brawl we had against the Mariners. That'll be out of play.
See what Olivares does, and part of the way he operates is those balls just off the plate are not good hitters' pitches, but they're enticing because he doesn't throw real hard. You make contact, but you don't make contact with the hitter's part of the bat. That's the sweet part. He's jammed Martinez in this inning. He's jammed Ricky Leday. Certainly didn't jam Leyritz, but that last pitch jamming Posada.
Olivares, his 3rd start since joining the A's. And the breaking ball down low. Nice stop by A.J. Hinch.
If you're a catcher like Posada, what would you do with first base open and a 3-2 count? You wouldn't give yourself a good pitch to hit. Let's see what Olivares does.
Kind of a free pitch, I guess, for a pitcher. And he comes inside with the hard stuff. Olivares hoping that maybe Posada would chase it, but he didn't. So 2-out walk, 2 men on for New York.
That was one of those unintentional intentionals. He wanted to throw the ball out of the strike zone, but he wanted Posada to swing at it.
Scott Brocious now stepping in, and the Bro Man has a chance to put the Yankees in front. Brocious 1 for 5, and that's cued off to the right side. 5 for 21 on this road trip. 2 of the 5 hits that he has have been home runs. And in the 21 times to the plate, he has knocked in 9 runs. So he's made the most of his base hits. In on the hands and shallow into left field, coming on his Grieve, and he gets there. So the Yankees threaten for the first time here in the 2nd inning as they leave a couple of men on. We've played an inning and a half, and there's still no score. Well, you can tell that that is the Bay Area. What a beautiful shot as we take a look at the Golden Gate Bridge and the fog just hovering above the bridge here in the Bay Area. So the Fox 5 and the Toyota dealers are proud to present the SAP channel of your television. Please don't miss it. As we go to the bottom of the 2nd inning, Oakland setting up Ben Grieve, Tejada, and then Chavez. Grieve, the 98 Rookie of the Year, had some problems starting off this year in the hitting department. Now with 17 home runs, that pitch inside. Comes from a baseball family. His dad, Tom Grieve, former senator and Texas Ranger player, and also former general manager for that organization, now a broadcaster for the Rangers. He's been around professional baseball his whole life and now making his own mark. Knobloch at second base. Knobloch has been as solid as anybody, making those plays at second base in the last, well, I would say 30 days.
Number 4, Miguel Tejada, shortstop.
Miguel Tejada beginning to make his mark. I mean, it's if you look around baseball, especially in the American League at shortstops, I mean, now Tejada looks like he's going to start making some noise of his own. Jeter and Garcia Parra, that'll be out of play off to the right side. Vizquel at Cleveland. And in the month of August, he has heated up.
Turned 23 years old on May 25th. He is the youngest of the crew. Not quite as talented or with the power of Garcia Parra or Rodriguez or Jeter, but it could develop, or he could develop into that type of hitter like Jeter has this year. Derek, with 21 home runs, he had his 21st last night.
Only in his second year, and who knows? Book's still out on Tejada, but signs are that he will develop into a power hitter and a good hitter. 1 ball, 2 strike count to Tejada. 1 man out here in the second for Oakland. Line drive, base hit. Tejada showing quickness through the strike zone.
That ball a bullet to center field. When Miguel Tejada was 16 years old, he signed with the Oakland Athletics. He was so frail and so thin and so malnourished that Oakland, before they could assess his talent, they had to feed him for a year. And then he went to that institute down there, the Juan Marichal Baseball School in the Dominican Republic. And only then did they have a chance to see what kind of skills he had. They thought he had the skills, but once they fed him for a year and put some nourishment in his system, they found out what kind of talent he was.
And the other part of that left side of the infield for Art Howell is Eric Chavez, guy that they promoted as the leading candidate to win the Rookie of the Year award. The Yankees will turn 2, and Chavez bounces into that double play. There goes the dynamic duo. So we played 2 here at the Coliseum, and there's still no score. Yankees Yankees with only 2 hits and the A's with 1 hit as we go to the top of the third. Still no score. Knobloch batting for the 2nd time. So the Yankees have had a chance to see Olivares for at least 1 time. Sometimes a lot is made about the 2nd time through the lineup. Adjusting to pitchers and what they have on that particular day and their speed. Knobloch takes one in there for a called strike. Now it's 1-1.
Yeah, it does help if you think a little bit, whether you're a pitcher or a hitter. It's all part of the cat and mouse game that's played between the batter and the mound opponent.
As long as you don't think too much.
Yeah,
some
right.
guys overanalyze a lot of situations and they forget to really concentrate on what they should be doing. That may have happened last night with Jimmy Haynes. He couldn't find the strike zone. He was ball free and walking just about everybody in his short stint. Then on the other hand, I think it was catching because Hideki Irabu lost his control, which was unusual for Hideki.
Hideki had a great line last night to Mel Stottlemyre after leaving the game with the score Yankees 12, Athletics 6, and he left after 4 innings.
Popped him up right side. Easy play for Velarde.
He did not get credit for the win, and he told Mel Stottlemyre that John Shulock, the home plate umpire, would not give him the fastball for a strike. He said, it's a good thing you and Joe took me out, otherwise the game may never have ended. I thought that was a great change in Hideki Irabu from his first year. I mean, the first year he would not have used humor as a weapon, but he certainly did last night in explaining and in understanding why Joe and Mel made the move.
But you and I thought maybe there was something wrong because we thought, well, you know, just to get 3 more outs, half an inning, only 87 pitches, 8-game winning streak. Jeter bounced out his first time up, so he's 0 for 1. Jeter came in versus Olivares batting .500. He was 8 for 16. Now he's 8 for 17 in his career.
This is uh-oh time for Olivares. Uh-oh for Derek Jeter. That's because he swung at a bad ball. Derek right there, the longest hitting streaks at the Oakland Coliseum. Carney Lansford had 30 in '84. Derek Jeter, Paul O'Neill with 21, and Derek with 19.
Lofted to right field, and it will curve foul. Lots of foul territory here at the Coliseum.
Talked about it last night. Derek's 3rd major league game, and there's that foul territory that Bobby was talking about. It's a huge park. It's as big outside the lines as inside the lines. Derek went hitless in his first game here, and since that first game, he's hit 19 straight.
Now 2 balls and 2 strikes to Jeter. And they continue to pound Jeter inside with that hard stuff. He started in his career throwing hard stuff inside, and he was inside outing it most of the time. Now he's worked on turning those wrists over. A lot of times now pulling the ball foul way off to the left. That pitch just missing outside. Chavez at third to throw out Jeter. Hustling down the line. 2 gone.
Jorge Posada and his right hand, and keep in mind Jorge is a young man. Banged up thumb that you were talking about earlier. Oh boy. Like an abrasion on the top of the right thumb.
Obviously still pretty sore as he catches Clemens this afternoon. Paul O'Neill pulling that one foul. Olivares has been inside on a lot of the hitters with hard stuff, but he's also had a lot of the left-handed hitters out in front using that off-speed split-fingered pitch.
Pretty smart pitcher,
Yeah.
really. He realizes his stuff is not good enough to throw a lot of strikes.
Two-out
Like that.
base hit for Paul O'Neill.
See, that ball was in the strike zone. So Olivares goes out of the strike zone, just out of the strike zone. And we mentioned in the first inning, he's enticing enough to get you to swing at it. But this one catches the plate, and Paul O'Neill catches it on the sweet part of the bat.
Talk about going down and getting it. That was a great shot there to show Paul O'Neill going down and getting it for his second base hit of the game. So Bernie Williams steps in with a couple of men out. O'Neill on at first base again for him. Bernie has also handled Olivares over his career, batting .545. We take a look at the American Express quote book. I was like, oh my God, this is one of the most embarrassing moments of my career. Talk about going from goat to hero in a snap. And that quote refers to that grand slam home run last night.
After going to first base on ball 3. By the way, he is the first player this year to hit a grand slam after going to first base on ball 3. Elias Sports Bureau told us, they gave us that stat.
Good. I'm glad to know that. We've had so many firsts this year. So many firsts. Tried to check his swing on the outside corner. Now it's 2-1.
This is just a classic pose right there.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, that is classic.
What do you want me to do? He knew he was going to be razzed when he got to the Yankee dugout. Ball 3-1.
Better to be congratulated first and then allow his teammates to get on him.
Well, it's his pitch coming up now with this 3-1 count. 2 men out.
Catchers should have a yellow light in their mitt that flashes on and off.
Well, I think that's Bernie earlier. They kind of showing what he thought he saw Spencer doing after Bernie made that walk down towards first base. Kind of, oh no.
Well, if you can't be embarrassed yourself, you might as well be embarrassed for your teammate, as Shane was last night for Bernie.
Spencer looking pretty cool this afternoon on the Yankee bench. That blondie hair and shades. Inside corner, strike 3. Bernie took it, and he thought it was too far inside, but Cooper rings him up. And once again, the Yankees leave a man on here in the third. Still no score here at the Coliseum. Zippo here at the Coliseum in the third inning, but tonight is the record attempt gone terribly wrong. What's a bullseye more than a football field away? Can he do it? Don't miss Guinness. That's tonight at 8 o'clock here on Fox 5. And the first pitch to A.J. Hinch here in the bottom of the third, up high. Hinch coming back from Vancouver and catching this afternoon. It started the year as the #1 catcher. McFarland was the backup. Now McFarland's the #1 guy. And it's ball 2 to A.J. Hinch. Hinch kind of lost his batting stroke. They wanted Hinch in there because he's a better hitter, or they thought he was, than McFarland. McFarland's better known for his defense. So he's had to go back to AAA to get some seasoning. High and deep in the left center field. Going back is Leday, and up against the wall he makes the catch. Leday had his hand out, feeling for the wall, And makes a heck of a play.
I think what he was doing, Bobby, is warding off Bernie Williams at left hand, either feeling or maybe both. It looked to me like he was warding off Bernie, saying, I may have to jump for this ball, and I don't want to have to bother with you in the wall. And Bernie properly is there to play the carom.
And
nice play.
Yeah, nice play. Leday and Bernie, you're probably right. They've had some problems in the outfield.
Yeah,
already
that's right. Communicating, yep.
As Tony Phillips fouls the first pitch back and out of play.
Easy sky today for these outfielders. You do not have a high sky. Cloudy day. Outfielders love that, as they pick the ball up almost immediately off the bat.
Pretty typical, though, early on in the day here in the Bay Area with cloudy skies. Most all the time, as a matter of fact. It's up high.
Most all the time in the morning, but here in Oakland, on the other side of the bay, it usually clears up here. But the Yankees had bad weather the first series of the year, opened the season here in Oakland. The rain delay and on opening day.
No more bad weather in Seattle, though. We've got the dome up there, so they got the best of both worlds at Safeco.
Well, what an impressive ballpark. I know we've talked about it in past broadcasts, but that is an impressive place. Safeco Field in Seattle.
Tim, we've got some terrible news to pass along to our fans. Whitey Ford, the chairman of the board, his family very saddened at the sudden death of his son Tommy, who died yesterday from a heart seizure. And so all of our prayers and thoughts go out to the Ford family. That's just got to be devastating for them, and I just can't believe it. And also our good friend Catfish Hunter. We understand on Sunday that Catfish fell, and Catfish one of two here at the Oakland Coliseum who have their numbers retired and put up on the outfield wall. Catfish fell, hit his head, and had some internal bleeding around the brain, and his heart stopped, and he is now unconscious in a hospital in North Carolina. And we understand also that he is on a respirator. So some very sad news for all of us. Whitey and Catfish, and of course we'll be thinking about every one of them and their families. You just never know. 2 gone for Oakland here in the third. That'll bring up Randy Velarde. Randy flied out to right field his first time up, so he is 0 for 1. Randy also with a 6-game hitting streak. Tough play for Jeter. Can he make it? No, he just couldn't get enough on it. Ranging way out into almost left field to try to throw out Velarde. Surprised he even got to it.
Yeah, and once he does, I think there, you know, the one concern, or at least I haven't heard anybody talk about it with Derek, is this is such an athletic move that if I were the Yankees, I'd be concerned about that move. Concerned from a standpoint of injuries. Of course, he hasn't hurt himself yet with that move, but you just wonder if someday, on a day that his shoulder is a little stiffer than it normally would be, on a play like that, if he could have something come loose up there.
Well, remember last night on the head-first slide,
right.
That's something he ought to think about not doing anymore, is that head-first slide, because he jammed his shoulder sliding into third last night. So many things can happen, as you pointed out. That head-first slide, fingers, hands, elbows, shoulders, even your face. You can damage any of those parts of your body.
A pianist should not have carpentry as his avocation, just like a base runner should not slide head first into a base.
Very well put.
be great to go up to Harwich when Harwich was alive and say, "How'd you hurt that thumb?" "Oh, I was nailing down in the basement. You know, I was nailing
doing some
the
remodeling.
wall, doing some remodeling, and hurt my hand. Drove a nail through my thumb." Oh, that's smart.
Back up the middle, base hit for Giambi. Make it 18 game for Giambi. And Velarde will go to third with 2 outs. Is he a hitter or is he a hitter?
His highest hit streak, 25, 2 years ago. That pitch low and away, and Giambi rockets it back past the rocket, and Velarde goes to third base.
That was a good pitch.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a good pitch.
Better hitting than the pitch was. You know, if he tries to pull that ball, he hits it to the second baseman. And he is locked in right now.
Now that brings up Yosemite Sam with a couple of men on. Even Matt Stairs struck out his first time up. Just an old-timer type of look out of Matt Stairs, and he gives you quickness through the strike zone and lots of power, so he is extremely dangerous. Now Clemens has gotten way out in front on him. No balls and 2 strikes.
Yeah, Matt looks like one of those guys who panned for gold at Sutter Creek in 1849. Year of the gold rush. And this area was so heavily populated. It'd have fit in well back then.
He's looking for gold right here. And he won't get it. Giambi going down. They're going to try the double steal. Girardi's throwback is in time. Oakland tried to steal a run with 2 strikes on Matt Stairs, and the Yankees were right on top of it. And it took the perfect throw from Jeter to nail Velarde with Posada blocking home plate. Still no score here at the Coliseum. Well, here in the top of the 4th inning, still no score. Yankees coming up. And Tim, this unusual play, I guess, but played nicely by the Yankees.
It was. It's unusual. Look at Velarde move into the line. We've talked so many times about how the runner at third stays outside the line. The only exception is on a double steal. That is the only exception. And the reason for that, when the catcher looks down to third, then he can't see how far that runner is off the bag at third. Tino Martinez 1-1. But Bobby and I both questioning the wisdom as to whether to send Giambi to begin with. I mean, you've got one of your top RBI guys up there in Matt Stairs. Giambi running clearly. He's going to get in a rundown as they try to steal a run. But a strong throw by Jeter and a good block of the plate by Posada. Yankees won that little contest. 2-1 to Tino Martinez. No score here in the 4th.
Billy Martin used to have a play that the guy on at first base would go and then fall down about halfway, you know, between first and second to make sure you drew the throw. And you can see Posada blocking the play, and Velarde couldn't get the foot in there. Gives the catcher a lot more time when you can get the ball in position yourself, but Posada was already positioned. A nice play by him. Girardi decided to slide and instead of making contact. Could have run over him.
Way outside, full count to Tino Martinez.
I meant Velarde, not Girardi.
Same amount of syllables.
Yeah.
Hit drilled down the right field line and off the wall. Martinez will try for 2, and the throw by Stairs gets him. How about that? Tino Martinez missed a home run by about a foot. 1 out here in the 4th inning.
Well, that's the second ball that's been hit by New York. Leyritz hit one into left center field, but this is a rocket. I mean, an absolute rocket, and it's just about a foot and a half from going out of the ballpark. Played nicely, perfectly by Matt Stairs, and he shows that he's got a darn good arm and pretty accurate. When you hit the ball hard like that, you can't believe that they throw you out at second base.
Here's Ricky Leday, who popped to short his first at bat. Shortstop Tejada with a gun throws out Leday. 2 outs here in the 4th inning. That'll bring up Jim Leyritz. It's interesting on the throw from Matt Stairs. This ball is just hit like a BB to right field. Again, missing a home run by about a half a foot. And when Stairs threw the ball in, you can see the second baseman Velarde there, not as a cutoff man. You're not trying to hit a cutoff man there. He's there for direction. He's showing the alignment of where to throw the ball. So there are times that cutoff men aren't really, it's a misnomer. They're not cutoff men, but they're alignment men. Obviously, what's the sense in hitting the cutoff man in that situation? You're trying to gun the runner out at second.
The Yankees wish they had him.
Yeah,
hit
right.
The cutoff man.
Yeah. 2-0 to Leyritz, who doubled his first time up. Fine throw by Matt Stairs. 2 outs here in the 4th, no score. There's a strike, 3-1.
I think that ball was hit so hard that it made a dent in the wall just beyond that Haas uniform.
Leyritz jammed, Velarde no problem, and the Yankees in a weird way to go 3 up, 3 down, with the great throw by Matt Stairs to squelch the double by Martinez. No score. No score, bottom of the 4th inning. This game just like last night's game, right, Bobby?
Yeah, just the opposite of last night's game.
Last night's game won by the Yankees 12-8. 4 home runs by the New Yorkers. 1 a grand slam by Bernie Williams. And then 3 solo shots by Ricky Leday, Chuck Knobloch, and Derek Jeter. Matt Stairs was the batter when Giambi went in the 3rd inning, and then the return throw by Derek Jeter was right on the money to get Randy Velarde the runner at 3rd, as the A's tried to score a cheap run, and Jeter and Posada said Up and away, 2 balls, no strikes now to Matt Stairs. Scott Spezio on deck. Fouls this one back. 2-1 to Matt.
Well, you give Matt Stairs those 2-0 pitches and those 3-1 pitches, and you're going to see swings like that. That was just a good swing by him, and Clemens got away with that one. He never gets cheated when he comes to the plate. Now, he is somewhat of a free swinger.
Inside, 3-1.
He will swing at pitches out of the strike zone. You can get him to swing at those pitches down and away and in the dirt, but not when he's ahead in the count.
As he is now with the count 3 balls and 1 strike. Another hack, another foul ball. Full count to Matt Stairs. No score here in the 4th inning.
Good indication of Roger Clemens' fastball there. He challenges Stairs, who has one of the quickest bats on this Oakland A ball club, and he was unable to get the bat head through. So he's got good life to the fastball, something that Stottlemyre likes for him to use a lot more.
Yet another foul away. Still 3-2. Some guys view the game differently, like Chuck Knobloch. High and away to Stairs, so Matt Stairs draws a walk. That is walk number 3 given up by Roger Clemens. Let's take a look at last inning. Remember, we talked about runners on at 1st and 3rd, 0-2 to Stairs. Velarde is the runner on at 3rd base. Watch him walk into the line from outside the line. Now, when Posada took a peek down there, he couldn't tell how far Velarde was away from third. So Velarde was able to get off a little more than he normally would, and he tried to score. It was a close play. But Jeter throws him out. Double play ball. Yes. 4-6-3. 2 outs here in the fourth.
Good play by Knobloch there, because Matt Stairs was hesitating, thinking that maybe Knobloch was going to put the tag on him and then throw back to first base, and Knobloch saw it. So he just goes to Jeter, and Jeter with a strong throw back to Martinez to make that double play work.
The reason that we came back and showed you folks what the runner on at third really does on that play. It's such an unusual play, and we only have a chance to show it maybe a handful of times a year. I mean, how many times do you see a team trying to steal a run? It's considered like a semi-pro play. Big league players are usually very adept at handling those plays. That's why they're not used that much. And they count 1-1 to Ben Grieve.
And it's a timing play too, because the action is at second base, because that runner has to make sure that he draws the throw down to second, so that the runner at third base and the timing of it has to break towards home.
So many things happen. The catcher looks toward third to look the runner back. That freezes a guy like Randy Velarde, and then throws to second base, and the runner at third can't be fooled by that. A lot of things happening. 2-2 now to Ben Grieve.
And let's just say, you see Velarde now just hovering around third base, and he'll start stepping in the line there, but Posada's throw quickly down to second. And the Yankees have that play, and they've already said, what are you going to do? You're going to throw through? You're going to throw back to the pitcher? Or are you going to throw back and make sure the runner doesn't even try to come home from third? So they have talked about that play, and Jeter knew that he would be the guy that would be covering at second base.
And he was way in front of the bag, so his throw was shorter. If he's on the bag, the throw's longer. Velarde beats the play. I mean, you break that play down, it's a neat thing to watch and a neat thing to analyze when it's worked correctly. And obviously, like a lot of other things, there are a lot of teams who don't work it correctly, but the Yankees worked it perfectly against Velarde and the Athletics. Still a no score, and it's still 3-2 to Ben Grieve.
Most of all of your infielders, Knobloch and Jeter, after each pitch, man on at first base, they give signs with their mouth, open mouth or a closed mouth, each one, to see which one's going to be covering on that pitch.
Another one out of play, still 3-2 to Ben Grieve. Strike 3 call. Clemens nibbling the inside corner for his third strikeout, and the Athletics are down again. 2 double plays for the Yankees in the first 4 innings. No score. Jorge Posada lifting a fly ball to center field. Tony Phillips should have no problem. 1 pitch, 1 out here in the 5th inning of a scoreless ball game. The Yankees play the Athletics tomorrow evening, then they take a charter red-eye home, and after an off day on Thursday, play the Minnesota Twins, Tom Kelly's crew. On Friday, it's travel mug night for fans 21 and over, courtesy of Maxwell House. And on August 14th, Fleet Bank presents Old Timers Day. That's this Saturday, and a strike to Scott Brocious. On Sunday, Beanie Babies Day, and all fans 14 and under with a ticket receive Millennium from the Beanie Babies collection. And remember what happened last year on Beanie Babies Day, as Brocious waves at the slider, 0-2 to Scott. Perfect game was thrown by David Wells. Call Ticketmaster 212-307-1212 or on the web www.yankees.com. 1 ball, 2 strikes to Scott Brocious. 1 out here in the 5th. No score. Foul ball, still 1-2.
Posada, with this swing here, you can see that he pulls off just a little bit too quick. And with that swing and the follow through, Posada seemed to grimace a little bit, like the left thumb was still hurting as he turned those wrists over and the thumb overlapped. And where the padding is there on that left thumb. You know more about that, Tim, than I do about fingers and catchers and hitting.
It looks like both thumbs. We talked last night about Mike McFarland, who sprained both thumbs, and it appears that that not only is the left thumb swollen right there, but the right thumb has some problems, little abrasions. Looks like warty tissue to me. And sometimes if you're rolling that left hand over as a left-handed batter, you're rolling over on that that tissue. Yeah. 2 balls, 2 strikes to Brocious, 3-2 to Scott.
Well, let's see if we can see it. Watch the hands as they roll over. You can see the top hand roll over on the bottom hand. And Posada's one of those rare guys that doesn't use any golf gloves or hitting gloves. He's a bare-handed hitter. I mean, he's el natural. You don't see that with many players today in baseball. That thumb gets any more sore, he may have to go to some gloves.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I got a bone bruise early in my career on my left hand, and I had to put a padding on the bat and use a padding all the time to hit.
Donut.
Because if I ever got jammed, the soreness would stay with me for so long, so I tried to keep from that.
Hit hard. Tejada deep from short. And a high throw. Nice play by Spezio. 2 outs.
Well, Tejada knew. Look how far he is at shortstop, almost in left field. He plants himself. Strong throw, just a little bit up the line. But Spezio with nice glove work there to put the tag on Brocious. Brocious could almost feel that ball was coming up the line. You can see he was leaning towards the right. Even though he didn't know where the ball was, he was reacting to Spezio.
Chuck Knobloch takes strike 1 from Omar Olivares.
Point I was going to say about that padding, I used to tape it on the bat, and when I didn't have a sore hand, it got to be just part of the bat for me. I couldn't hit without it.
Get used to it.
Couldn't hit with it or without it, as a matter of fact.
The Athletics could hardly do without Miguel Tejada. Makes another fine play in foul territory. No score halfway through regulation. Bottom of the 5th inning. Miguel Tejada singled his first time up at the first pitch from Roger Clemens is outside. Yankees have won 6 straight, 5-0 on this West Coast swing. 4 in a row from Seattle, and then 12-8 last night against the Athletics. Splitter is low, 2-0 to Tejada. There's a strike, 2-1.
The way the left side of this infield has shaped up under the tutelage of Rod Washington, who is the third base coach. Rod there has been an infielder his whole career, and he has taken special assignment on Tejada and also Eric Chavez. Rod has in Chavez now, he has, or Chavez I should say, he has the best fielding percentage third baseman in baseball.
We were kidding about that earlier. Is it Chavez or Chavez? Well, the Spanish pronunciation is Chavez, C-H, but it's been Americanized into Chavez. Eric is from the Los Angeles area, and a cute article in the Oakland paper about Eric and his family this morning.
Well, he said really he didn't know. He had to go back and ask his brother, was it Chavez or Chavez? And when he did, we finally found out it was Chavez, but everybody wants to Americanize it, so it's Chavez. But his dad made a funny statement because since all this little pronunciation controversy, his papa said, well, his hitting has improved dramatically since he became Chavez instead of Chavez.
Keep it Chavez.
Keep it Chavez.
You've heard of keep it simple? Keep it Chavez. That's simple in Spanish.
And that's all right with him.
Call him anything as long as things go well. And things have gone well for Eric Chavez recently. He had 3 hits in last night's ball game. He was on base 4 times. Takes a curveball from Roger Clemens, 0-1 to Chavez, who grounded to a double play his first at bat.
A.J. Hinch made a comment to say about that name controversy. He said, oh, what the heck? He said, I'm just going to call him what I always call him, and that's Chavi.
0-2 pitch, poked to left. Will he try for 2? Yes. And Leday's throw is late, so a double for Eric Chavez. And he's at second with 1 out.
Papa said his hitting has improved dramatically since he became Chavez. What a good piece of hitting there. I mean, that's just like poking it into left field. Like you knew what you were doing. No stopping at first base. And he knew he had double on his mind when that ball left the bat.
Gosh, that ball looked 6 to 9 inches off the plate.
But it was up.
Yeah.
If the ball is down, it's a little bit different.
A.J. Hinch, the batter. He is the catcher. Ball 1. Here's the contact on that pitch.
Look where he's going. Now the ball's up in the strike zone. If that ball's a little bit lower, he can't hit the ball. If he hits it, he's going to pull it on the ground back to the pitcher or to the second baseman if he does make contact.
But you're right, Bobby. It was up between the belt and the letters. And that's why Eric was able to get the bat on it to left field. Hinch, right field. O'Neill there. So A.J. Hinch has hit the ball hard to right. He's hit the ball hard to left. 0 for 2 on the afternoon.
The very reason they sent A.J. Hinch back to Vancouver was to work on that particular part of his hitting. Hitting the ball with authority to the opposite field.
Tony Phillips now the batter. Speaking of names, how can you have initials and be called A.J. and go to Stanford? If your nickname is A.J., you got to go to Baylor or Memphis State.
You're going to say Oklahoma.
Or Oklahoma State. I was thinking.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, not Oklahoma.
Yeah, I figured if I was going to say Memphis State, I had to include Oklahoma
absolutely.
State. Well, A.J. makes an out here in the 5th. No score after 5. First pitch to Derek Jeter, a slider for a strike. And now another slider from Omar Olivares, who has pitched well. So has Roger Clemens. 4 hits for the Yankees, 1 in each inning. 4 hits for the Athletics. This one fouled away as Olivares tries to come right back in there to Derek. 1 and 2 to Derek Jeter.
During this recent slump that Jeter has been in, his first slump of the year, his demeanor has stayed the same. And that's a sign of a guy that will continue to hit for high average and be a productive hitter throughout his career, because a lot of guys, when they go into such slumps that Jeter has been in, especially after being so successful early in the season, and to still have that same outlook that when he comes out each and every day, even though he was 2 for 32 at one time, you gotta put that behind you, and today is another day that you can work on it and try to work yourself out of it.
Joe Torre says that a hitter should never be affected by the previous at bat, good or bad. Ground ball left side. Tejada throws out Jeter. 1 out here in the 6th. New York Yankees baseball on Fox 5 is brought to you in part by your local Toyota dealer. Toyota every day. By Red. Now your business can enjoy the same internet speed of a big business with Red high-speed digital connectivity. Call 1-888-RED-2000 today. And by Ford Cars and Trucks, built for the way you live at your tri-state quality Ford stores. Along with Bobby Mercer, Tim McCarver from the Oakland, used to be the Oakland Alameda Coliseum, and now it is the Network Associates Coliseum. a stadium that was remodeled for football. We kidded about it last night that we are staring into the mass of Mount Davis. That's what they call that reconstruction in center field, obviously because of the owner of the Oakland Raiders, Al Davis. He was responsible for that baby right there.
Well, they needed more suites, more seating for football, and since they have built that to center field, the ball the way it had carried here at the Coliseum has certainly changed, because you couldn't blast one out of here. The ball just didn't travel well here in this air in this Coliseum, but now they just fly out of here.
We saw that last night. 1 ball, 2 strikes to Paul O'Neill. On the other hand, because of the rule in the NFL that in order to televise, stadiums have to be full, they can't televise the Raiders locally because the stadium is rarely full here, and it's certainly rarely full for athletics games. They have never drawn in this ballpark.
No. They drew, what, 24,000 last night,
yep.
And that's what I consider a bad crowd, even though it was a Monday night. But Oakland was playing their very best month here at the Coliseum. They're back in the race. They've made some trades. They've got some new players. They had the world champion New York Yankees coming in. They knew they had to beat these guys, and only 24,000 showed up. Bill, some things going on about who's going to be the owner of this particular franchise, and we've had some names bandied around, and we'll know, or baseball will know, sometime in the month of September, the middle of September, they're going to have to make a decision on whether they're going to change ownership.
That is the jersey of Walter Haas, who is the CEO of Levi Strauss. They are the former owners of the Athletics, selling to Steve Schott and the group run by Steve Schott. And Steve Schott, Ray Fosse telling us on the field before last night's game, a real baseball fan. Athletics sweeping the San Francisco Giants for their last world championship. There's Ray Fosse and Bill King. Bill, a legend in this area. Way inside, full count now to O'Neill.
Andy Dolich, a former communications director here for the Oakland A's in the franchise, is leading the group to buy this Schott ball club. Joe Morgan, of course, Hall of Famer for Cincinnati and broadcaster for NBC, ESPN, and he was part of that group. Now I understand he is no longer, but Reggie Jackson has joined in his place as being a part of that Andy Dolich group.
Our Lincoln Mercury scoreboard, a final, the Diamondbacks beating the hapless Chicago Cubs. Boy, the Cubs are really struggling. My goodness. Here's Bernie Williams with 1 out, 1 on. The Yankees have not had a base runner reach third base in this game, and only 1 reached second. That was a 2-out double by Jim Leyritz in the second inning. No score here in the 6th. Line to left field, base hit. O'Neill has to stop at second base. So Bernie Williams with his first hit, and hit number 5 for the Yankees.
Well, Bernie continues his hot hitting, and that pitch is down and away. Bernie had struck out his last time up, tried to pull the ball his first time up, so this time with that pitch going down and away, he just lines it into left field. So adjustments made by Williams in his third attempt.
He had grounded to second. He had struck out, and some folks from Bristol, Connecticut on hand. A lot of Yankee fans on hand, and our folks from Bristol love Tino Martinez. Easy guy to like. 1 for 2 in this game. Grounded hard to the right side. Spezio, Tejada, back to the pitcher. Olivares covering. neatly turned a 3-6-1 double play. Puts out the fire of the Yankees here in the 6th. No score after 5.5. Good ball game, but just the opposite of last night's game. A game won by the Yankees 12-8. Folks, you can catch John Rowland, Rosanna Scotto, Nick Gregory with weather, and Kurt Menefee on sports, New York's #1 primetime news team on the Fox 5 10 o'clock news this evening. Late edition last night. Our game was over about 1:15 a.m. New York time. We still had the troops in the studio.
Actually, it was an early edition. It was in the a.m. time.
Oh, it was the early edition, but it was the 10 o'clock news at 1:30
a.m.
Yeah. Randy Velarde now to face Roger Clemens. Not a lot of base runners in this game. Pitchers have done a good job in spacing the base runners. No more than 2 an inning.
And when they do have them on, they make the pitch to either get a double play or
2 double plays for the Yankees and 1 double play for the Athletics. 1-1 to Randy Velarde here in the bottom of the 6th inning. Nasty outside fastball right on the corner. 1 ball and 2 strikes to Velarde, with Jason Giambi, the hottest hitter for the Athletics, on deck. Inside, 2-2.
With Randy Velarde now playing second base, that loosens up Tony Phillips to play the outfield or play any of the outfield position for Art Howe, along with all the infield positions. That's the reason that Tony is so valuable. Of course, Randy can play 2 or 3 positions on the infield too. But Tony Phillips, when McDonald is struggling, or Christensen, he's able to put Phillips out in the outfield. Gives him a lot of versatility.
3-2 pitch to Velarde. Line to right field, base hit. So Velarde found the count at 1-2, and then Roger missed with 2 pitches. And he lines 1 to right, and here's Giambi with nobody out here in the 6th inning.
Now batting designated hitter, Jason Giambi.
We have failed to mention that the reason Giambi is the DH this afternoon is because he sprained his left shoulder in Sunday's game against the Chicago White Sox, won by the Athletics on a walk-off 9th inning home run by Matt Stairs to win it 7-5. Inside, ball 1.
Talk about trying to take the place of somebody who was a legend out in this area. Jason Giambi, of course, not playing first base today, but he takes over there when he is healthy. Mark McGwire was, when he was traded, Giambi was the guy that had to take the place of McGwire.
One and one to Jason Giambi.
You see that article in the paper, the San Francisco Chronicle this morning. There was a column on Mark McGwire in St. Louis and how McGwire was such a distraction to that ball club that they couldn't win.
Low with the slider. Well, you know what? There's some truth to that, in my view. And Mark McGwire is such a presence, such an individual presence, that in a way, and it's certainly not Mark's fault, but in a way it detracts from a team concept. I think it adds to insecurity of the players who can't do what he does. Fouled away. 2-2 now to Giambi. I know this. I know it's a strange thing. I mean, what are you going to do? Ask a guy not to hit 70 home runs or not to have 44 this year? But if you're a teammate of his, you fall into the category of adoration, and you're worried more about what he's doing than what you're doing. Not saying that that's necessarily the case, but I understood where that article was going today. And there's at least an element of truth in the theory that that could possibly be the case. Full count here to Giambi. We'll see if Velarde's running.
For distraction purposes, but the point of the article was, well, if he's such a distraction, what has happened to the pitching staff?
Yeah,
I mean, you start with pitching, and St. Louis has had all kinds of problems with their pitching. Sure, with McGuire, that's got to be a distraction.
There goes Velarde, foul back, still 3-2.
But I don't think it's any purpose at all to say that the Cardinals can't win with Mark McGuire there. That's we'll look at Sammy Sosa. I mean, the Cubs are not playing well, but they don't have any pitching either. So,
of course, the Cubs did win last year with Sammy Sosa with all that hoopla, so that shoots holes somewhat into the theory that I just espoused.
Well, I mean, I pretty much know what you're saying. Yeah, it is a distraction, and if you're not a player that's attuned to something like that, you can let it take your mind away and somewhat feel like, well, I'm left out because all the attention is always focused on a McGuire or Sosa. And if you've got that alter ego, that it will affect you.
Velarde running, fastball is inside. So Posada threw anyway, but a moot point. So the best scoring opportunity for either side today with the Athletics. Runners on at first and second and nobody out, and Matt Stairs the batter.
Well, Posada out to have a conversation with Clemens, and rightfully so. Toughest part of the game now for Clemens, because tough hitter coming up in Matt Stairs and nobody out. If he's going to make some pitches, now's the time that he needs to make them. And Matt Stairs will be the guy. The dangerous of the two with Spezio on deck, and then the young hitter and Ben Grieve coming up after that.
Stairs 0 for 1, a walk and a strikeout. Ball 1 to Stairs. Ball 2. 2 balls, no strikes to Matt Stairs, as Roger Clemens finds himself in a heap of trouble here in the 6th inning of a scoreless ball game.
You can't ever tell on Joe Torre's face whether he has concern or not, but obviously there's concern there. Stairs with 5 home runs in the month of August, tied for the major league lead.
Rather healthy cut, 2-1 to Matt Stairs.
But not a cut that you would want, because the ball is ball 3. And Stairs was so in tune to swinging at that 2-0 pitch that he swung at a bad pitch.
Ground ball right side. Tino from one knee gets the lead runner, or the in-between runner, as Velarde stays at third. So a fine play by Tino Martinez, 1 away.
Yes, a good play by Tino Martinez. Even a better pitch by Roger Clemens, getting Matt Stairs, one of the most dangerous hitters in this lineup. But look at Tino's play. He makes sure of the 1. And that was to force the guy at second base, and Jeter immediately looking that runner back at third in case he wanted to make a big turn.
First baseman Scott Spezio.
Scott Spezio grounded into a double play his last time up. He's 0 for 2. First and third, 1 out for the Athletics. Low, ball 1.
Clemens has gotten into a couple of jams this afternoon and has been able to make that pitch to get himself out of it. Not very good numbers versus Clemens, and you got to remember that Spezio is a part-time player. He doesn't play every day, and only playing this afternoon because of Jaha not being in there again.
Scott had a good night, however, last night. He had a couple of hits, including A home run. Velarde on at third. Stairs on at first base. 2 balls, no strikes to Scott Spiezio. Ball 3. 3-0 now to Spiezio. That is a key graphic right there. 197 left-handers last year. This year 291.
Split finger.
That's a fastball right down the pipe. 3-1 to Spiezio.
I observed that as not being able to throw the split finger, but also pitching behind in the count all the time to left-handed hitters. Not being able to put them away after you are, you know, a 1-1 count or 1-2 count or 0-2.
Fouled out of play. 3-2. Well, look at this inning. He walked Jason Giambi behind the whole count to him. It was 2 balls and no strikes to Stairs. Stairs helped him out, swinging at the high fastball, grounded out on the 2-1 pitch. It was 3-0 to Spiezio, and now it's 3-2. So we'll see if Matt Stairs runs and Posada out in front of the plate to give Jeter and Knobloch and Clemens the signs as to what he will do in case Stairs runs. Time is called, and Posada and Clemens will converse as Jeter and Knobloch determine who's going to cover should Stairs run. A lot of that will depend on what kind of sign Posada flashes. If it's a fastball, Knobloch will cover. If it's a splitter or a breaking ball, Jeter will cover. The reason for that, a left-handed batter on the off-speed stuff more inclined to pull the ball. So we'll see. Jeter covering if Stairs runs. Stairs did not run, and Spiezio fouls it back. A lot of stuff before the stuff, huh?
And I don't think that Clemens really minds if he walks Spiezio here. I think it's the same type of pitch that he's going to have to make to Ben Grieve anyway, so he wants to make a quality pitch, and hopefully Spiezio will hit the ball on the ground. He gets the double play and gets out of it, especially with the runner that time at least holding on at first base. I thought the runner would be going.
Jeter covering again. Runner not running, and this one drilled to center field. Williams back, and Bernie can't get to it. 1 run scores. Stairs will try to score and make it 2-0 Athletics here in the 6th.
For a guy that wasn't even supposed to play today, Scott Spiezio, that's a fastball right down Broadway on a 3-2 pitch, and Bernie made a good effort. He got a little bit too close to the fence, so the carom was back on him very quickly, and that's what allowed Stairs to score all the way from first base, even though he wasn't running on the pitch.
So the double by Spiezio, driving in 2, and here's Ben Grieve. Low, ball 1. 2-0 Athletics.
Well, that was a telltale sign pointing out what Clemens did against left-handed batters last year as
really
compared to this year.
Yep. Outside, 2 balls and no strikes behind to Ben Grieve, the 4th consecutive left-handed hitter to which he has fallen behind.
Because always the equalizer was the split finger that he would equalize the left-handed hitter with, besides running that fastball inside on him.
Ball 3. The 4th straight 3-ball count to left-handed hitters. Miguel Tejada on deck. See if Ben Grieve is swinging here. 2-0 Athletics. They're looking for more. Taking. Strike one. Your point about the splitter, Bobby, you can't throw that splitter and expect hitters to swing at it when they're behind in the count. Hit deep to right field. 4-0 Athletics. On a 3-1 fastball.
When you lose one of your best pitches, and the hitter knows that, and the hitter always hitting with the count in his favor, no matter how good your fastball is and where you locate it a lot of times, the big league hitters will make you pay for it. And this is what Reeve does to Clemens on that pitch. And the same for Spezio before him.
Hitting the 3-2 fastball to center field. Here's Tejada. Ball one to Miguel. He is singled and grounded out. 4-0 Athletics with 4 runs here in the 6th. Strike one, 1-1.
Well, the bullpen is silent for New York. New York used 4 last night.
Slider lifted to right field and playable. O'Neill there. And Paul puts it away. And that'll bring up Eric Chavez, the third baseman. Ben Grieve can do anything but grieve after that bolt. I don't think Ben Grieve can hit a ball any harder than that. 3-1 inside fastball, 2-run shot. Here's Chavez to left center and playable. Leday, Williams converge, and it's Bernie who puts it away. But the Athletics strike first here in the 6th. Tapping it off with a 2-run home run by Ben Grieve. It's A's 4, Yankees nothing. Top of the 7th inning, Ricky Leday 0 for 2, and Ricky takes a fastball low from Omar Olivares. There's a fastball for a strike. The score was 0-0 going into the bottom of the 6th inning, and then the Athletics exploded for 4 runs. Single by Velarde, a walk to Giambi, fielder's choice. Tony Phillips can't get to this ball as Ricky Leday doubles to center to open the Yankees 7th inning. So the Yankees right back at you.
Good piece of hitting by Leday, and this ball just kind of takes off once it leaves the bat. Tony Phillips thought he had a bead on it, and the ball just kept carrying and carrying out there to center field. Here at the Coliseum, I have never seen the ball carry like it did last night and this afternoon. Normally it carries better in the daytime than it does at night.
Jim Leyritz has singled, and the slider on the corner to Jim, 0-1. Said he had singled. That was Tino Martinez thrown out, stretching the single into a double. Jim Leyritz has doubled. One ball, one strike to Jim Leyritz here in the 7th. Ricky Leday on at second base and nobody out. Another one slices the corner. 1-2 to Jim. Jorge Posada on deck. Two and two now to Leyritz. Jim jammed, and after a delay, Lede goes to third, and the first baseman Spezio can't get the ball out of his glove. How about that for a dunker? I would imagine it's a hit for Leyritz.
Got to be an infield hit. It was hit so soft nobody could react to it. Oliveros did his part. Once he saw he couldn't get it, he's headed towards first base. But Spezio, he just couldn't get a grasp on it. And they had a shot at Leyritz. In fact, he was going to be out easy if Spezio could let go of it. Lede, watch him. Obviously, the ball in the air, he's got to stop, make sure the ball hits the ground before he goes to third. Well, the Yankees coming back here with a bit of a threat. Nobody out. That'll bring Peterson, the pitching coach, out to the mound, and that will get the Oakland A's busy down in their bullpen. Oliveros, one of the best at throwing ground balls to get double plays. He had thrown 23 double plays before this afternoon. So
T.J. Matthews and Buddy Groom now warming. Let's take a look at the Budweiser 7th inning game summary. Ben Grieve, a 2-run home run following a Scott Spezio 2-run double. The Athletics with 4 runs in the bottom of the 6th. Omar Oliveros has pitched very well. You see the ground ball outs he's recorded. Jason Giambi with a base hit this afternoon and an 18-game hitting streak. On the Yankee side, they're threatening. First and third, nobody out. Posada hitless. And Jorge takes outside. Jorge has walked, and he has flied deep to center. Change up, fouled away. 1-1 to Posada with Ricky Lede on at third. And Leyritz on at first base. You have to wonder why they're holding Leyritz on with a left-handed batter up there and a 4-run lead. He's not going anywhere.
No. In fact, he's only got about 3 steps off the first base bag.
Yeah.
If that much.
Outside. If Posada grounds one in the hole on the right side, it could be fielded if Spezio were back. And Art Howe is going to be regretful that he's holding Leyritz on. Makes no sense. Leading by 4. 2 balls and a strike to Posada. Down the right field line, base hit. Lede scores easily. Leyritz to third, Posada to second, and now things get interesting.
Boy, a nice piece of hitting by Jorge Posada. It looked like Leyritz may have hurt his left knee. He's kind of wiggling that knee back and forth. You can see Monahan looking out at him. What a nice piece of hitting. Obviously, Posada had ideas of pulling that ball to the right side, taking advantage of what you were talking about there. He got it up in the air and hit it so hard that it goes all the way to the wall. See Leyritz as he rounds second, and there at third base when he pulls up, you can see he kind of comes up a bit lame in that left leg. But he doesn't have to go far now. He only has to go home. Everybody, looks like Joe Torre or Gene Monahan hollering at him from the Yankee bench, and he assures them that he's all right. Maybe.
So it's a 4-1 ball game. A double by Posada, his 14th double, 43rd RBI. Infield is back, of course, for the Athletics. Brocious outside, ball 1. Something to keep in mind. With Leyritz limping like that, even though the infield's back, on a ball that's hit hard to one of them, you might have a play at home, as Art Howe has seen enough. And Art's going to make the move after the 1 ball to Scott Brocious, and T.J. Matthews comes in the game. And we're going to go quickly. We'll be right back. Yankees threatening, trailing by 3. Omar Oliveros out of the game. He pitched well, leaving the game with runners on at second and third. Nobody out. T.J. Matthews is the pitcher. While we have a chance, it concerns Oliveros, by the way. Let's take a look at our General Motors trivia question. Who was the last pitcher to beat the Yankees twice in the same season with 2 different clubs. Now, the reason that we asked that question is because if Olivares is the winning pitcher today, he will have beaten the Yankees with 2 different clubs. He beat them with the Angels earlier, and if he wins today, of course, with the Athletics, as we take a look at the numbers on T.J. Matthews.
T.J. Matthews, part of that St. Louis Cardinal trade back in 1997 when the Cardinals received Mark McGwire, and has been an important part of this bullpen for Art Howe. But you could see with T.J. coming in so quickly, Art Howe wasted no time, that he thought Olivares had lost something on that sinker ball to get the ball on the ground again, and running out of gas, he wanted to get him out of there.
First pitch, a strike to Scott Brocious as T.J. works to A.J. A.J. Hinch is catcher. Poked foul. So Matthews comes in and throws 2 strikes to Brocious. It's 1 ball and 2 strikes to Scott.
T.J. did not go to Stanford. Leyritz on at third, Posada down at second. T.J. went to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
That's more like a school to which initialed people go.
And he's also the son of the former Kansas City and Chicago Cub outfielder Nelson Matthews.
Grounded. Foul ball. Quick thinking by Chavez. He tried to make the tag of Leyritz. That would have been a very interesting play had that ball been fair.
Some interesting dancing going on at third base by Jimmy Leyritz there.
Whoa.
And I don't know what kind of ballet move that was. You're the ballet expert. Watch Leyritz. He's coming down. He's going to go home. Obviously, if the ball is on the ground, and now all of a sudden he's got to do a little, what do you call that, a pirouette?
Tiptoeing through the tulips.
Pirouette.
A quasi pirouette at third by Leyritz.
Quasi. All with a bad knee.
That's right. Still 1 and 2. Hit hard. Chavez looks at Leyritz, and sure enough, had Leyritz tried to score, he's a dead duck at home. 1 out.
Well, he's almost a lame duck. At third base, you can see he can go home with just about any ground ball except for the one to Chavez at third. Chavez looks him back. That's what the third baseman is supposed to do, and then go ahead and throw it over. So that holds the runners at second and third. Now there's 1 out.
That'll bring up the leadoff batter, Chuck Knobloch. Chuck 0 for 3 against Olivares. Another grounder, this one foul. 0-1 to Chuck Knobloch. 4-1. Athletics on top of the Yankees. Athletics with 4 in their half of the 6th. New York with 1 here in the 7th. They have runners on at second and third, and 1 out. Infield back, of course. So Leyritz will try to score on a ball hit to anybody in the infield other than the pitcher or third baseman. Knobloch in the hole, 0-2.
Good swing there, and Knobloch would want that pitch back again. When he swung at it, you could just see almost the disgust in his face that he fouled it back. And T.J. Matthews, who has had some shoulder inflammation, also wearing that number 30 on his hat, and keeping in mind Tim Raines, who has now left this ball club and is suffering with the disease of lupus along with everybody else. He won't be back this season. They hope that he will respond to treatment and will be back with them in the year 2000. Him staying around 1 more day just to visit with the Yankee ball club, his former teammates, and talking to Chili Davis. And once he did that, he headed back to southern or central Florida, I think it was. So remembering Tim and what he's going through now.
Oh, sorry, partner.
Chili Davis obviously has not started today's game. Jim Leyritz, a designated hitter. He's at third base. In the 7th inning. No balls, 2 strikes to Chuck Knobloch. Strike 3 swinging. T.J. Matthews coming in with 1 ball on Scott Brocious. Has retired Brocious on a grounder, and now Knobloch on a strikeout.
Just good old hard fastball right down the middle. A little bit up in the strike zone. Oliveira's liking what he sees. Matthews on a mission.
Well, that's an odd graphic. 0 for 3 for Jeter. He has not hit a ball out of the infield in this game, grounding twice to short and once to third. Poke foul. 0-1 to Jeter.
How this game can be so forgiving. You can be 0 for 3 and look so bad in 3 times at the plate, but 1 base hit or 1 home run and it's all forgiven. Almost like it never happened.
Leyritz on at third. Posada on at second. 2 outs now. Still 4-1. Athletics. Fly ball center field, and that should do it for the Yankees here in the 7th inning. What a job by T.J. Matthews. Coming in with runners on second and third and nobody out. 3 in a row retired. 4-1 Athletics. Bottom of the 7th inning. Tim McCarver along with Bobby Mercer here at Network Associates Coliseum in Oakland, California. Overcast day. Unusual for this time of the year. Usually that overcast is reserved for city by the bay, across the bay, San Francisco. It's usually sunny here, but not today. And not today for Roger Clemens. He is not having a sunny afternoon. He gave up 4 in the bottom of the 6th and trails 4-1 as A.J. Hinch leads it off for the Athletics here in the 7th. He has hit the ball hard twice with nothing to show for it. Once to left, once to right. 0 for 2. Ball 1 to Hinch. Andrew J. Hinch from Waverly, Iowa. This one hit deep to left field, and nobody's going to catch this one. Home run A.J. Hinch, 5-1 Athletics. That ball may have ended up in Iowa. Whew.
Second long ball given up by Clemens in this game, and Hinch liking what he has done there after working on his hitting extensively at Vancouver. Just goes to show you, if you will trust your hand, the ball inside, you can react to it.
Good point,
The
Bobby.
time up before, he lined one to right field. He got nothing out of it. But boy, keeping that shoulder in and trusting those hands.
Tony Phillips now. Talked about it before. A lot of hitters don't give their hands enough credit for being as fast as they really are. A.J. Hinch has hit the ball hard 3 times and finally has something to show for it. 5-1 Athletics. Outside to Phillips. 1-1 to Tony. One and 2. Dan Nolte warming for the Yankees. We have not mentioned that Jason Grimsley has appealed his suspension. Almost added a new word to our language. Expansion is not a word, to my knowledge. 2-2 to Phillips. Serving a 3-day suspension, not serving one, but handed a 3-day suspension for his part in the brawl on Friday night in Seattle. Frank Rodriguez, pitcher for the Athletics. We have not heard as to whether he will be appealing his suspension.
Also, Tim, just to add something to that, I read a little report in the paper that Jeff Nelson was on his way out here to the West Coast and possibly could be activated tomorrow afternoon for tomorrow's game.
Full count to Phillips. Then you have to wonder who the Yankees are going to
who the odd man out is going to
send
be,
down, right?
If that is true. We don't know that's true. So it appears that Nelson's rehab assignment is over with in the minor leagues, and he could be joining the Yankees very soon, maybe even tomorrow.
Strike 3 call. Phillips down again on strikes. Tony questioning Eric Cooper, the home plate umpire. Strikeout number 4 for Roger Clemens. 1 out here in the 7th.
Looked like a pretty good pitch there. You got to remember that that's when the ball crosses the front part of the plate.
Looks like a backup slider or a slider intentionally designed to go over the outside corner. Tony appeared to give up on it. And there's a strike to Randy Velarde, who started everything off in the 7th inning with a single to right. Ground ball to third by Brocious. The ball went under the glove of Scott Brocious, probably an error, and a rare one at that.
Ball hit hard, and the ball seems to just kind of take off on him. You see Brocious trying to get himself in position to where he can glove it on the left side. Ball was hit hard enough, too hard for him to get in front of it, and you saw it just goes underneath the glove. It's a reaction play.
Yep. It is being scored a base hit. So liberal scoring by the official score. And here's Jason Giambi, who is 1 for 1, a couple of walks and a single with an 18-game hitting streak. 32,474 on hand this afternoon. One of the larger crowds without a giveaway this season. First pitch high to Giambi. Even when the Athletics won in 72, 3, and 4, they drew over 1 million people only 1 year of those 3. There goes the runner, and Posada can't get it out of his glove. So Randy Velarde with a steal of second, his 16th stolen base of the year.
Big jump by Velarde, so Posada knows that he has to hurry, and when he tries to hurry, he never grasps the ball. Velarde with the big jump. You can see that Velarde looks back, which you're supposed to do, to see what happens in case the hitter pops the ball up or lines it or hits it.
3-0 now to Giambi, and Jason now walks for the 3rd time this afternoon. And here comes Joe Torre, and that looks like it's going to be all for Roger Clemens.
The month of August has been one of his better months, but today, the 8th of August, is not a good day.
"5-1 A's. Five to 1 Athletics, 2 on and 1 out here in the 7th. And our General Motors trivia quiz, who was the last pitcher to beat the Yankees twice in the same season? with 2 different clubs, and we're disallowed to answer because we know the answer. It was Bud Black in 1990. That was in relief. Now the last pitcher to start and win 2 games for 2 different teams was Gaylord Perry back in 1975 for Toronto and Cleveland, or Cleveland and Toronto in that order. And that's what Omar Olivares could do today. He's beaten the Yankees with the Angels and trying to do it against the Athletics. Dan Nolte's first pitch to Matt Stairs is strike 1. Velarde on at second base, Giambi on at first. There goes Velarde, and no throw, no play on Velarde, who steals third after stealing second. Uncontested at both bases.
Well, Velarde, one of the veteran guys that knows how to take advantage of a situation. All it does is put a runner at third base with less than 2 outs, and the fly ball will score him. A double play still in order if Nolte can get Stairs to hit the ball on the ground. That's it.
One and one to Matt Stairs. This game coasting along, 0-0 in the bottom of the 6th inning when the A's exploded for 4 runs. They've added another here. Ground ball right side. Martinez wants to come home with Nolte down. Velarde saying go ahead. The tag is made, and now nobody's at second base for a return throw. Fine play by Tino Martinez. 2 outs.
Excellent play by Tino. He worked that play exactly the way you teach it in spring training. He was coming home, and Velarde stopped in between. Obviously no chance to complete the double play. You can see Nolte hit the ground to get out of Tino's way, and then Tino rushes him back and charges him and makes him commit. Once he commits, he's either going to throw the ball or put the tag on him. Watch Nolte hit the ground here, thinking that Tino's coming home with the ball. And when Velarde stopped, he's trying to at least get in a run down long enough to get Giambi over to third base and the Stairs runner down to second base. Once again, watch Nolte hit the ground. There he sees, and that's called getting out of the way in a hurry.
Get down, Charlie. And Dan did, and Tino Martinez with a fine play. A lot of first basemen who would opt for the double play trying to go to second, but Tino realizing through experience it's a very difficult play to make. Matt Stairs is not a slow runner. He's not fast, but he's not slow, and would probably have beaten the throw back to first. So Tino, the right selection and right execution. 3 balls and no strikes now to Scott Spezio, who drove in the first 2 runs of the ball game with a double in the 6th. Giambi on at second, Stairs on at first. 2 outs here in the 7th. 5-1 Athletics. Strike 1. Check swing on a 3-1 count. Well, hitters love that, huh? Hitting instructors too.
Almost like thinking it's ball 4 and it's only ball 3 when you go down to first base on your own. When you get the pitch that you want and you try to get out of the way of it, if you think it's high and it's ball 3 anyway, or ball 4, you hit your bat. We'll see if he can make them in.
So the runners will be running here. 3-2, 2 outs. There they go, and the fastball is high. So Spezio walks. First walk issued by Nolte, and that'll bring up Ben Grieve, who had a 2-run homer his last at bat, his 18th home run of the year.
Ben Grieve.
That home run is a career high for Grieve, or ties him for his career high. He hit 18 last year in that rookie campaign.
There's a splitter that's over, and not as big an average or high an average this year for Ben, but more productive with the long ball. 60 RBIs now as we look at the runners, Giambi, Stairs, and Spezio. 0-1 to Ben Grieve. Way outside, 1-1.
It appears that right now Nolte's best pitch is his breaking ball. At least that's the one he's getting over more consistently. Got pretty good spin to it.
Got Matt Stairs on the splitter to get the ground ball, play by Martinez. Then he walked Spezio, and it's 1-1 to Grieve. Tapped foul that looked like a splitter. 1 ball, 2 strikes to Grieve. Ball 2, 2-2 now to Grieve. Miguel Tejada on deck. Swing and a miss at the breaking ball. Posada steps on home for the 3rd out. Taking the force play. The Athletics, of course, with 1 in here in the 7th, lead it 5-1.
Well, back here at the Coliseum, a nice crowd on hand. 34,474, and take a look at this. Well, let's just take a look at the selection of fans here at the Coliseum. I believe, and I do know that they qualify as the Toyota Everyday Fans. Lots of Yankee fans on hand, and part of that 32,000 here at the Coliseum. The Yankees need runs, and so Paul O'Neill will lead it off against T.J. Matthews. Some defensive changes for Art Howe. Jason McDonald now playing left field. Ben Grieve out, and Ryan Christensen in center. And the A's lead it 5-1 with New York batting here in the 8th inning. O'Neill is 2 for 2 this afternoon with a walk. And TJ delivering some mail right down the middle. Now it's 0-2. Well, unlike Jimmy Haynes last night, Olivares didn't have that much of a problem this afternoon, but T.J. Matthews has thrown 11 pitches, and all 11 pitches have been strikes. Paul extending his hitting streak to 5 games with that infield hit back in the 1st inning. Swing and a miss, strike 3. He just blows it by. Make it 12 in a row.
Impressive performance by T.J. Matthews. Paul swinging under that fastball. So Matthews has retired 4 in a row today. And since coming off the disabled list in late July, he has retired 18 out of 20. So that's 22 out of 24 hitters that he has retired since that stint on the DL.
One out, and Bernie Williams, who is 1 for 3. Swing and a miss.
Got the ticker going on his strikes. Man. about a guy being zeroed in. That's T.J. Matthews.
Tino would like to zero in on Matthews. Last year he appeared in 66 games for Oakland. That's inside. That's his first ball that he has thrown in 14 pitches. And that just missed. Billy Taylor obviously no longer with this club, and he was the closer. They turned it over to Jones. Up high for a ball. Now it's 2 balls and a strike. T.J. Matthews may be on his way to something in the closer row. Mr. Doug Jones there. He is the oldest member of this club, around 40 years of age, which is not old to me, but old for baseball, I guess you would say. That's in there for a call strike. Now it's 2-2.
Right at the knees. A.J. Hinch trying to bring it up a little bit. He did bring it up, but that ball appeared to cross just above the knees.
Matthews appearing in his 38th game as the Yankees play in their 112th game this year. Games over 500 on the road. Low ball 3-2 now to Bernie. Pretty much a pitcher's duo as we take a look at the RBIs that Bernie has had on this road trip. He has been a machine. Grounded foul right side. Nice play. Well, no. Booted by Jose over at first, but he did get in front of it, and that'll be a souvenir for somebody. And a happy Yankee fan. Thank you, Jose.
Jose playing the politician this afternoon. What else is new?
Yeah, really.
I hope that gets back to him.
Oh, it will.
I'll blame it on you.
It's almost like he tapes every one of our broadcasts.
Of course.
And watches it in its entirety.
I'll blame you for it.
Well, if he's watching it in the tape, you won't have to blame me. You'll know. Oh, look at him. He hurt his hand. He hurt his hand. It's just almost a slow roller down there. Look at all that equipment he has in his back pocket, just in case.
He has room for no more.
Some of these hitters get on. He's got gloves and more gloves. Probably some shin guards in there, too. Maybe some hand guards. Chopper, and Matthews will have to let it go foul.
TJ started to field that ball, and then he realized that Bernie was by him, so he let it go foul. Watch this. He wanted to field it. Whoa, nope, I'll let it roll foul.
If the ball had taken a straight-on hop for Matthews, he would have picked it up and put the tag on Bernie, but it took a right turn on him, and he would have had to have a collision with Bernie if he tried to pick it up.
Yeah. Jose Cardinal is one of the funniest people I've ever met. Ever. You were a teammate with him. Yeah. I was a teammate with him. He is warmly funny.
Up high, ball 4, 1 out walk here
and really knows his business. We kid a lot about Jose on the air, but he is invaluable to Joe Torre with outfield positioning and base running, which is so vital. He is the base running instructor, and could he ever run the bases?
He's also added another dimension for Joe Torre. He is the interpreter for El Duque, Orlando Hernandez. Not only with the press, but also with Joe Torre and Mel Stottlemyre. Strike one to Martinez. Tino hit into a double play back in the 6th. Got his only base hit so far in the 4th, so he's 1 for 3. It was a long single back in the 4th. He almost tore the wall down in right field with a line drive that missed a home run by about 1.5 feet. Now they're playing behind the runner at first. That'll be foul. Better crowd this afternoon than they had last night. 24,000 last night, 32,000 this afternoon. Having to see if it was a special day like Kids Day or something like that.
I don't know that either.
A lot of kids in the stands.
Yeah, I don't believe today's a giveaway, but not sure.
I don't know what that play was.
Wait a minute. Whoa. You're going to pitch out after playing. Yeah, pitch out after playing behind the runner at first. Now Zimmer's saying, I can understand the quizzical look on both Zimmer and Torrey's face.
Come on, Steve. Come on, double play. Let's go.
Looks like Art House smiling at Don Zimmer.
Out in front again and pulls it down. They threw everybody off on that pitch.
Man.
Come on, Steve, let's go.
Yeah, I guess what Art's thinking, not that screwy. You think about it, you play the first baseman behind him, and then if he doesn't get a good jump and wants to steal, thinking he can walk to second base, you pitch out, maybe get him once. I don't know.
Very unlikely, but
yeah. Long shot.
It is a possibility.
Yeah, I suppose.
This time, cued off the end of the bat, and it goes to the opposite way. So Tino with some pretty good swings off of Matthews, but has yet to put one in play. Day waits on deck. The Yankees close out this West Coast trip tomorrow. 10:35 start. Orlando Hernandez versus Heredia on MSG. That pitch up high for a ball. Now it's a 2-2. And then they take the charter back to New York, where Minnesota comes to town Monday. Check that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll have all those games here on Fox 5, except for Saturday's game. That's Old Timers Day.
Come on, baby. All right, dude,
you ready?
Let's go.
I'm getting there. If I could just hit one that high, I'd be happy. I know Tino's not happy with that one. But in an Old Timers game, that'd be a pretty good swing. 2 gone for New York here in the 8th. That'll bring up Leday. AJ out to talk to TJ. And it's a rather long conversation with 2 men out here in the 8th. Those pitchers, they don't like for catchers to really come out there and have a long conversation with them.
If you're any kind of catcher, you don't want to go out there either. Only time you go out to the mound is when you want to be heard. If you go out there too much, your words become meaningless. But I haven't found that to be the case with A.J. Hinch. He seems to be appropriate in that regard.
Leday, who doubled into center field his last time up, leading off in the 7th. We were showing you Doug Jones, so now he begins to warm up for the A's.
Come on, TJ, let's go. Run out.
Talk about somebody that can throw the ball hard. That's Doug Jones.
Change off the change. Now, something I don't understand. The same pitcher is out there, and now they're holding against the runner at first base. Here comes Rick Peterson, the pitching coach. Why would you play behind him with Tino Martinez up and with Ricky Leday hold him on.
The only thing I can think of is that they don't think Ricky Leday is much of a pull hitter.
Well, he is. He can pull a ball down there as well as anybody.
But of course, they also pitched out in this inning too.
When he was playing behind him. Tough to gauge.
Conversation over with the pitching coach. So Spezio holds Bernie on.
Maybe the manager of the Athletics should change his name from how to why.
There he goes, and it's into left field. And it's another base hit for Leday. So McDonald brings it back into the infield, and the Yankees, with 2 outs, have 2 men on here in the 8th.
Sinker low and away, and a good job of hitting by Ricky Leday. 0 for 2 in his first 2 at bats, 2 for 2 since. Well, that's a good swing right there. The more you see of Ricky Leday, when he has confidence, second half of the season, the more you have to like him.
Pretty much proves it. Leday was going the opposite way, and they knew that.
Yeah, right. Hard wide to the mound.
That's going to be all for Matthews, and Jones will come into this game. So a pitching change here with 2 outs in the 8th. We'll be back right after this. Well, the closer is in. It's 5-1 here in the 8th inning. Come see the Yankees take on the Kansas City Royals. That's August the 17th through the 19th. Enjoy an afternoon game on the 19th, and fans 14 and under receive a Yankees watch courtesy of Carvel. You can always get your tickets at Ticketmaster. You can call 212-307-1212. Well, Doug Jones, I mentioned he throws hard. That was sort of a wisecrack out of my mouth. He is one of those guys that throws the ball slow, slower, and slowest. But he gets the guys out. So he's not your typical closer that you would say if you look at Mariano Rivera and Auguste Gossage.
Troy Percival, Billy Wagner, Billy Koch.
He throws strikes, and it's a 1-ball, 1-strike count. 1-ball, 2-strike count to Leyritz. Jones, 41 years of age. And then he'll come back with what looked like a blazing fastball on the outside part of the plate with pinpoint control. Striking out Leyritz. Yankees threat is gone here in the 8th. 5-1 A's. All right, back here at the Coliseum, bottom of the 8th inning. A's in front 5-1 as they come to bat versus Dan Nolte. Bottom 3 coming up: Tejada, Chavez, and then A.J. Hinch. Oh, the Yankees had a big threat going in the 8th inning. T.J. Matthews had to leave, and then Doug Jones comes on to strike out Jimmy Leyritz. Yankees picking up nothing. And Tejada, who is 1 for 3, leads it off here in the 8th inning. Two balls and no strikes down to Tejada. And the A's take another look at that pitch.
Remember the track event hop, skip, and jump? That's what that ball did. More fans coming in late.
Best time to get a ticket. And the concession stands are open.
Yep. Literally.
3 balls and a strike now to Tejada. Oakland has now homered in 12 straight games with the home run from Ben Grieve and also A.J. Hinch. And Tejada will pop this one up. Hang time for Tino Martinez. One gone. So Chavez.
Eric Chavez.
1 for 3 this afternoon. Yankees lead in this series 3-1. Strike one to Chavez. And it just seems like only yesterday when the Yankees began this 1999 campaign out here in Oakland.
That's true.
Well hit into left field, and Ricky Leday will look up, and it's gone. A line drive opposite field home run for Eric Chavez, number 12 on the year. It's 6-8. Wow.
I was as impressed as you. That is a wow. That ball low and away and just a rocket out of here. Kept carrying and carrying and carrying. The thing about that young man, he's going to get stronger too. Entered the season only 21 years old.
Thank heavens they started pronouncing his name Chavez.
Yeah.
A.J. Hinch with a home run his last time up. That ball didn't lose any velocity.
See where that pitch was. Not difficult to hit that pitch for a base hit, but to have that much power on that type of pitch is impressive.
Well, when you think you've made a pretty good pitch, and the guy hits it over the fence opposite field, it's got to be a pretty big left down. You can see that Dan Nolte couldn't believe that it went over the fence in left field. I've never seen the ball travel like it travels here now, though. Well, I've said that many times, but I'm still in disbelief. Nolte taking a little bit more time than A.J. wanted him to, so he steps out and re-gears himself. Two and two now to Hinch. Not only has Chavez developed into one of the best fielding third basemen, now the bat is really coming around, and before this year is over with, he may make a statement for that Rookie of the Year award.
Maybe. Got a long way to go.
Yeah, he's got a long ways to go, but he has come a long ways since the season started.
Jeff Zimmerman of the Texas Rangers was 9-0 at one point. He lost his first game just the other day. Carlos Beltran would be my guess right now, all around with the Kansas City Royals. And then Brian Dahlback of Boston, Chris Singleton of the White Sox. Nice crop of fine players.
You see a whole lot of other fine young players when Minnesota comes to Yankee Stadium, and also Kansas City will be in right after that. So they've got a boatload of young players. This is Ryan Christensen batting for the first time in the game since coming in and playing center field for the Oakland A's. 1 ball, 1 strike count to Christensen.
That's right. The Yankees play tomorrow night, the third game of this series. Then after an off day on Thursday, play Minnesota for 4. And then next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday against Kansas City.
Flashing over towards the stands. No play for O'Neill.
That Kansas City, an impressive offensive team.
And this Oakland A ball club, they plucked one of their starting pitchers. In fact, the anchor of that staff, Kevin Apier, is now with Oakland and not with Kansas City anymore. Apier has won his only 2 starts for the Oakland A's, so they're happy with what they have in him. They know they have offense now. There's Kevin Apier.
He can pitch, and Kansas City's going nowhere this year. That's why they got rid of him. And Oakland could go somewhere this year. Billy Beane getting Apier for the right to play in October.
Well hit into center field, and Bernie with his back to home plate. He runs that one down. It does not leave the yard. So Oakland is gone. Eric Chavez adds one more for Oakland, and they lead it with the Yankees coming up in the 9th, 6-1. New York Yankees baseball on Fox 5 has been brought to you in part by your local Honda dealer, who invites you to discover the value of Honda today. And by Budweiser. Now's the perfect time to enjoy a brewery fresh Beechwood aged Budweiser. By Continental Airlines, our priorities are simple. They're yours. Continental Airlines. Work hard and fly right. Your local Lincoln Mercury dealer invites you to come in and see the full line of Lincolns and Mercuries today. Well, last hope for the Yankees in the 9th inning, and that's Posada fouling the first pitch off from Jones. And Posada, every time he swings, it appears that he's got some pain in that left hand or some part of his hands.
He showed that warty tissue on the top of his right thumb, plus the banged up left thumb.
Following Posada will be Brocious, and then Knobloch. Inside corner, 1-2.
Thing about Doug Jones, he doesn't have a breaking ball. He doesn't have a splitter. Everything's on the same plane, but the varying speeds, remarkable.
There you're talking about it there. He had a good fastball the pitch prior to that one, and then there, that's kind of a looper.
Home plate umpire Eric Cooper getting the help from John Shulak, who comatosely shook his head.
Lofted into left field. Put away by McDonald, one gone.
John Shulak was about as blasé as I've ever seen an umpire in last night's ball game. Ridiculously blasé, in my judgment. Almost like he's bored.
Well, throughout his career, he's always been one of those very deliberate ball and strike umpires.
There's one thing being deliberate, and there's another thing being blasé.
Brocious sends one out into center field, so Christensen puts this one away. 2 gone.
Posada still bothered by that left thumb right there. Tough to hurt. It's tough to hit with your hands hurting.
You know what? It's tough to heal yourself during the course of a season too, when you get a bad bruise like that or some kind of irritation on your hands, because it's an everyday game. You just don't have enough time to really heal. Knobloch last hope. Out of play. Knobloch looking for his first base hit. He's 0 for 4.
Hey, it's my favorite guy.
Line and just foul. Nice call by Shulak down the third baseline.
You seem to be a real John Shulak fan. You and John are tight, right?
He did actually point foul. And he did it more in a hurry than what he's ever been.
Yeah, I suppose. That's only because the ball was at him.
That's a start. Knobloch broke his bat on that foul ball, so he had to go back and get some more lumber.
if he were a traffic cop in his town or in New York City, you'd have a wreck a minute.
Probably run over him. Ground ball to the right side. This should do it. Velarde throwing out Knobloch. So the Yankees down 1-2-3 here in the 9th inning. And the Oakland A's have defeated this ball club by the score of 6-1. And Art Howe in this long homestand that they are on, this 13 game, they have now won their 10th ball game. And Jones picks up his 6th save of the year. What a club, and boy, can they play here at the Coliseum. Coming back at the Yankees this afternoon after that pounding they took last night.
You're right, Bobby. They are a feisty group of players that seem to be gathering steam as the season gets longer. The development of guys like Eric Chavez, a couple of hits today, that opposite field home run. Ben Grieve, a second-year player with a home run. Impressive.
Well, it's in the books, and the A's win it. And we'll be back right after this message for the wrap-up. All right, back here at the Coliseum, Oakland 6 and the Yankees 1, and Roger Clemens loses his 5th game. His record now 10-5. Oliveira's pretty impressive this afternoon, at least through 5.5 innings, and it looked like he just kind of gave out.
And becomes the first starter since Gaylord Perry back in '75 to beat the Yankees in 2 consecutive games with different teams, as Ben Grieve is the man with the red-hot connection. His 18th home run of the year. Now, the Yankees really, in the bigger scheme of things, don't have a lot of problems, but Roger Clemens, if the Yankees were entering postseason play tomorrow, Roger Clemens would be a concern. He would be a very serious concern as far as New York is concerned.
And Roger, even though his record is 10-5, his earned run average up almost to 5 now, as he gives up 2 long balls to this Oakland ball club. And you're right, Roger today seemed to, pitch well the first 2 or 3 innings, and then all of a sudden he lost the strike zone again and lost a split finger, and was only able to throw the 1 pitch, and that was the fastball, and he couldn't locate it.
Bringing up the fact that Roger fell behind 4 left-handed hitters in a row with a 3-ball count to each and paid for it.
Well, the Yankees finally lose their first game on this West Coast trip, being perfect up at Safeco Field. Last night they did a pounding on the A's here at the Coliseum and making them pay for walking and not throwing strikes. And then the A's come back this afternoon. That shows lots of character. And the reason that Art Howe likes this ball club, they were only 2 games back in the wild card when this game started this afternoon. Well, once again, the final score is the Yankees 6-1. Check that, the Oakland A's 6 and the Yankees 1. Be sure to join us again Friday night when the New York Yankees take on the young Minnesota Twins. It will all start here on Fox 5 at 7:30. Coming up next is The Simpsons here on Fox 5. Well, they're getting loose and getting ready as the shoes begin to tighten up. The only thing of it is, sometimes you just had to look at it from a different perspective. Jimmy Leyritz got the start as a designated hitter. He got a double. Ricky Leday made a fine play in the outfield. Some nifty infield play by the Yankees. It just wasn't enough. So lots of running, lots of high fives, some home runs. That's Ben Grieve. He hit 1 today. Yeah, it just wasn't Yankees' day. So for all of us here at the Fox 5 telecast, and from my partner Tim McCarver, I'm Bobby Mercer. Good night.